At my daughter's birthday party, my grandson came to me and said, "Grandpa, you have to leave now." I was surprised and asked, "Why?" Then he said, "Just go now. You will understand later." I trusted him and left. What happened next was rather unbelievable. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Anita Grace from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I used to think birthdays brought people together. At least in my family, they always had. For as long as I can remember, I was the glue, hosting backyard barbecues, manning the grill with a spatula in one hand and a beer in the other, cracking jokes while the kids ran circles around the lawn. But this time, it was different. This time, I wasn't hosting. My daughter, Elise, insisted we throw her birthday at her place. She called it a grown-up turn, told me I deserved to sit back for once and just be a guest. I didn't argue. Truth be told, I was tired. Ever since Helen passed last fall, the house had been too quiet. A party sounded like the kind of noise I needed. Elise and her husband, Marcus, had moved into a bigger house last year. Something she described as investment grade, though I suspected it was more about image than equity. They didn't exactly hide their appetite for things: designer furniture, imported wine, a pool no one swam in. I'd helped with the down payment, and I never asked for it back. That's just what you do for your kids. Or at least, what I thought you do. The house buzzed when I arrived, filled with the sound of clinking glasses, light laughter, and the artificial warmth of curated perfection. Elise greeted me with a side hug, arms stiff, not like when she used to jump into my arms after school. Marcus offered me a whiskey and a rehearsed smile. "We've got a special seat for you," he said, motioning toward a round table in the corner of the patio, shaded under a cream-colored umbrella. It was already set with one plate, one glass, and one neatly folded napkin. "Reserved for the king," Elise added, voice light but eyes unreadable. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. That's something grief taught me. How to perform normal when your gut tells you something's off. I sat. I watched people swirl around me, mingling like puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit together. And that's when Ethan, my 12-year-old grandson, approached. He looked pale. Not sick, just disturbed. Eyes darting, lips pressed tight like he was holding in something hot. He leaned in close, his little fingers clutching my wrist like a vice. "Grandpa," he whispered, "you have to leave. Now." My smile faltered. I tilted my head, searching his face. "Why?" I asked, my voice just above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. He glanced back toward the kitchen where Elise and Marcus were whispering, laughing, arranging something behind the counter. Then he looked back at me, urgency swelling in his eyes. "Just go now? Please. You'll understand later." I stared at him. For a heartbeat, I wanted to dismiss it, chalk it up to nerves or childhood imagination. But I'd seen fear before. Real fear. I'd seen it in Helen's eyes when the doctor said the word metastasized. I saw that same fear in Ethan now, and that was enough for me. I stood quietly, placed my napkin on the table, and whispered, "Walk me out, will you?" He nodded. No one noticed us slip through the side gate. In the car, I sat for a long minute with the engine running. I kept glancing at the house through my rearview mirror. I didn't know what had just happened, but my hands were shaking. Ethan hadn't followed me past the driveway. He'd run back in like he was afraid of being caught. I thought about turning around, confronting Elise, demanding answers. But something inside me told me to wait. So I drove home. My phone buzzed about an hour later. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Mr. Hargrove?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Officer Bailey with the Oak Ridge Police Department. Are you safe right now?" I blinked. "Yes. Why?" "There's been an incident at your daughter's residence. We need you to come in for a statement." That was the moment the ground shifted. By the time I arrived at the station, the news had already broken. A man named Jeff Turner, Marcus's old college friend, apparently, had collapsed at the party after dinner. The paramedics couldn't revive him. His plate had been the one placed at my seat after I left. He'd joked about taking the VIP spot, according to one of the guests. The one Elise had told me was reserved for the king. He died within minutes of finishing his meal. I sat in a cold room with fluorescent lighting that made everything feel clinical and unreal. The officer laid it out piece by piece. Toxicology confirmed poison. Rat poison, to be exact. Mixed into the garnish. There was security footage. Text messages. Plans Elise and Marcus had made that pointed not just to a crime of opportunity, but a premeditated attempt on my life. I couldn't speak. My mouth went dry. My body was frozen in place. And through it all, I kept seeing Ethan's face. The terror. The plea. Just go now. He saved me. That little boy saved me. And somewhere between the shock and the heartbreak, a colder truth emerged. My own daughter had tried to kill me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the blank space where Helen used to keep her reading lamp, clutching my phone in case someone called to say it was all a mistake. That this was some mix-up, a clerical error, or a bad dream I hadn't yet woken from. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face, those wide, terrified eyes, and the trembling grip he had on my arm. I heard his voice over and over again. Just go now. What kind of child tells their grandfather to run away from his own daughter's party? And what kind of father walks away from a celebration in silence, only to realize later it had been a funeral in disguise, his? The call came around 9 a.m. Elise and Marcus had been taken into custody for questioning. That was the word they used at first, questioning, as if they were just witnesses in someone else's tragedy. But I knew better. The police had pulled enough from Marcus's phone alone to warrant their arrest. Screenshots of conversations, browser history, delivery records for the poison they'd ordered under a fake name and had shipped to Marcus's office. My stomach turned when I read those messages in the detective's hands. "We'll make it look peaceful," Elise had typed. Like he choked on dessert. "No one will question it." Marcus responded with a thumbs up and a joke. "To the inheritance." That word, inheritance, clung to me like smoke. I had always intended to divide my estate fairly. I wasn't rich, but the house was paid off, my pension stable, and I had a few investments that added up over the years. I even added Elise's name as co-beneficiary in my trust, alongside my niece, Julia, who'd been like a second daughter after Helen passed. I thought I was being generous. Thought I was building something that would outlive me with love. Instead, I'd unknowingly given my daughter a reason to kill me. I spent the morning giving my statement to two detectives who looked as uncomfortable as I felt. They kept apologizing. Apologizing for asking so many personal questions, for dragging me into something so ugly. But it wasn't their fault. They were just the messengers. The horror had come from inside my own bloodline. When they played me the security footage, Elise and Marcus in the kitchen, whispering, carefully plating one dish differently from the others, I nearly vomited. The footage showed Ethan creeping in the background, watching, unnoticed. They must not have seen him. He'd stood behind the doorway, his head just barely visible in the reflection of a microwave door. That was how he knew. That's what he saw. My daughter, his mother, slipping something into my food. The detective paused the footage and looked at me gently. "Do you think your grandson is in danger now that he's spoken up?" I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because the question itself cracked something in me I didn't know could still break. I had been so focused on my own betrayal, I hadn't yet considered what this meant for Ethan. He had to go home last night. Back to that house. Back to her. What kind of mother tries to murder her father in plain view of her child? "I want custody," I said, my voice hoarse. "I want him out of there. He needs to be with someone who won't use him as a pawn or a witness." The detective nodded. "We're coordinating with CPS. He'll be placed with family while things are sorted." "Place him with me," I insisted. "He's all I have left." By that evening, Elise and Marcus were formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder and second-degree murder for the unintended victim, Jeff Turner, the college friend who'd eaten my plate. There were photos of him in Elise's wedding album. I remembered shaking his hand once, years ago. He'd smiled and said, "You raised a good one." I guess we were both wrong. News spread fast. By morning, local channels ran the story like wildfire. "Suburban couple plots to kill retired father for inheritance," the headlines read. They plastered Elise's face across the screen, her mugshot staring blankly into the camera. My phone buzzed with texts from old coworkers, neighbors, even members of my church. Most were filled with sympathy. A few danced around the question they didn't dare ask directly. Did you see this coming? No, I didn't. That's the part that keeps me up. I raised her. I held her when she was colicky, paid for her dance classes, picked her up from college after her first heartbreak. I taught her how to ride a bike and how to drive a car. And now she tried to kill me because waiting for my death wasn't fast enough. I finally broke down on the back porch. Julia showed up, uninvited but needed, with coffee and an arm that didn't flinch when I collapsed into it. It's not your fault, she said as I sobbed. She made her choice. But Ethan didn't. He still needs you. I nodded. I couldn't speak, but I nodded. That night, Ethan arrived at my house with a suitcase in one hand and a backpack in the other. A social worker dropped him off. He didn't cry. He didn't ask questions. He just walked in, placed his bag by the couch, and hugged me like he was afraid to let go. I'm sorry, he whispered. No, I told him. You saved me. You did everything right. We sat together in silence. And in that silence, I made a promise. To myself, to Helen's memory, and to the boy who'd given me the rest of my life back. I would protect him now, no matter what came next. There's something peculiar about betrayal. It doesn't hit you all at once. It trickles in, first as disbelief, then confusion, then anger so sharp it steals your breath. But what lingered longest for me was the shame. Not the shame of what had happened, but the shame of what I hadn't seen. The signs, the distance. The way Elise had stopped calling unless she needed something. How Marcus had always managed to steer conversations toward money, investments, trusts, the market. I used to think they were just ambitious. Now I wondered how long they'd been planning my funeral while still hugging me goodbye. The detectives called again 2 days after the arrest. They'd gathered more evidence, and they wanted to go over it with me. Details they believed I deserved to know. I drove to the station with Ethan in the passenger seat. He wore headphones and stared out the window, quiet, as if afraid that any sound he made would shatter the fragile peace we were clinging to. I didn't press him to talk. I figured we'd both had enough words for a while. At the station, I sat across from Detective Bailey again. She had that look I'd started to recognize, professional, but weary, like she didn't want to be the one to say what had to be said, but knew she had to anyway. We pulled messages from Marcus's office computer, she began. It appears the plan was detailed. Your daughter and son-in-law had been researching methods for several months. Months? I echoed, stunned. She nodded. It started around the time you updated your estate trust. That hit like a punch to the ribs. I remembered that meeting. Elise had even come with me, sitting beside me as I signed documents, nodding like she supported everything. I'd thought it was responsible of her. I never imagined she was taking mental notes to calculate her odds of cashing out early. Bailey slid a file across the table. We found a list. I hesitated before opening it. But when I did, I saw my name at the top. Beneath it, estimated figures, my pension, the value of my home, liquid assets. Then a line Marcus had written in a chat. If he dies naturally, Elise still gets half. But if we time it right, we can sell the house immediately and transfer assets before the rest of the family intervenes. I pushed the folder away. My hands were shaking. What about Ethan? I asked. Did they know he overheard them? We believe not, she said carefully. Your grandson kept quiet until the last minute. Smart kid. Too smart, I muttered. He's 12. He shouldn't have to carry this. She leaned forward. Mr. Hargrove, I need to ask something difficult. If this had gone differently, if you had eaten that food, who would have likely found you first? I didn't hesitate. Ethan. He was sitting next to me. She exhaled. Then it's good you trusted him. That trust haunted me. Because the truth was, I almost hadn't. That night at the party, I considered brushing it off, laughing, staying just to be polite. How many seconds had stood between me and that poisoned plate? How close had I come to death because I didn't want to offend my daughter? When I got home, Ethan was already curled on the couch, hugging a pillow. I sat beside him, not saying anything for a long while. Eventually, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me. What exactly did you hear, bud? He looked down, shoulders tight. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, he said. I got up to get water, and I heard Mom whispering. She said, tonight's the night. After he eats, we'll celebrate for real. I swallowed hard. Did she say my name? He nodded. She said, once Dad's gone, we can fix everything. There it was. Confirmation, in a child's voice, that my daughter had looked at me not as a person, not even as her father, but as a problem to solve. She's not your mom right now, I said quietly. She's someone else. And I promise, I won't let that version of her near you again. His lip trembled, but he didn't cry. He just nodded, hugged the pillow tighter. Over the next few days, the investigation grew teeth. Search warrants led to even more damning evidence. A second purchase of poison, likely backup, in Marcus's office drawer, and receipts for life insurance policies taken out just weeks before the party. Elise had signed one of them, listing herself as sole beneficiary in the event of sudden loss. I could barely read the lines without shaking. That she'd put it in writing, like my life was a bet she'd placed at a racetrack. Julia visited every evening. She cooked, cleaned, even brought over clothes for Ethan and helped enroll him in summer tutoring so he wouldn't fall behind. She didn't ask for anything. I could see in her face what I used to see in Helen's, quiet loyalty. No games. No agenda. One night, she looked at me over the dinner table and said, "You know, she always resented you. Elise. She thought you loved Helen more than her." I frowned. Of course I loved Helen more. She was my wife. Julia nodded. Yeah, but Elise thought love was a competition. Always did. That night, I looked through old photo albums. Birthday parties, dance recitals, family trips. Elise was always smiling, but I noticed something I hadn't before. She was always watching me. Not the camera, not the cake, me. Like she was measuring. Trying to gauge if I noticed her, if I favored her. Maybe I hadn't noticed enough. But even if I hadn't been the perfect father, I hadn't deserved to die for it. I stayed up late drafting a letter to my attorney. I wanted everything revised immediately. Elise and Marcus were to be removed from the estate completely. My trust would be transferred to a fund for Ethan, with Julia as secondary trustee. No loopholes. No forgiveness written in legalese. Just hard, clean lines. The next morning, I took Ethan fishing. We didn't catch a thing, but as we sat on the bank of the lake, lines dangling into still water, he looked up at me and asked, "Do you still love her?" I didn't answer right away. "I don't know," I said finally. "But I know I can't forget what she did." He nodded. "I think that's okay." And somehow, hearing it from him made it feel true. The morning I saw Elise in handcuffs, something in me cracked, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't the kind of pain that leaves you gasping or bent double with grief. No, it was quieter than that. Numb. Detached. Like watching a home video on mute, recognizable faces, familiar movements, but all the warmth sucked out. They arrested her at the courthouse, right after her bail hearing. Marcus was denied outright. His prior financial fraud charges from years ago had resurfaced. But Elise, at least for a moment, had tried to secure bond. She didn't get it. I watched it unfold from the gallery. I hadn't intended to be there. I'd come for the paperwork, custody filings for Ethan, trust modifications, things that felt tedious and transactional next to the bomb that had gone off in our lives. But then I saw the media crowd forming in the hallway, reporters huddled like vultures, and I knew. I walked past them, ignoring the flashes and murmurs, and slipped into the back row just as the judge read out the charges again. "Elise Hargrove, you are charged with conspiracy to commit murder and second-degree murder in the death of Jeffrey Turner." She didn't look back at me. Not once. Her face was stoic, almost bored. She wore a beige suit and the same lipstick shade Helen used to wear for PTA meetings. It made me sick, like she was pretending still, clinging to some idea of respectability even as the courtroom closed in on her. I saw Marcus too. Shackled, slouching in his seat like this was a traffic violation, not the implosion of a family. He leaned toward her once, whispered something that made her smirk. That image, her smiling, while I sat with the ghost of my future beside me, burned into me like acid. After the hearing, they led them through the hallway in cuffs. The crowd pressed in, cameras flashing. Elise caught sight of me then. Our eyes locked for less than a second, but I saw it, something flickering beneath the mask. Not remorse, not fear, resentment. She hated me. She hated that I was still alive. Later that afternoon, back at home, I found Ethan in the backyard with Julia, planting tomatoes in one of Helen's old garden beds. His shirt was dirty, knee-stained, but his hands were steady as he pressed each seed into place. He looked up when I approached, offering a faint smile. "How'd it go?" he asked. I crouched beside him, feeling the earth cool beneath my fingers. "She's not coming home." He nodded. No tears. Just a slow, exhaled breath. "Okay." Julia wiped her hands on a towel and stood. "I'll give you two a moment," she said quietly, disappearing inside. I sat with him for a while. The silence between us felt heavier than anything the court had said. Finally, he asked, "Did she ever love me?" The question cut sharper than anything Elise had done. "Of course she did," I said slowly. "But love doesn't always come out the right way. Sometimes people bury it under fear, or greed, or whatever pain they never learned to name." He looked at me. "Do you still love her?" I paused. "I don't know. Maybe I always will. But love doesn't mean trust. And trust, that's gone." He nodded, eyes glazed with something older than 12 years. "Okay." That night, everything came crashing down in the most unexpected way, through a voicemail. One of Elise's friends, a woman named Rachel who'd known her since high school, left a message on my landline. "I know you hate her right now, but Elise wasn't always like this. After Helen died, she said she felt like she was fading, like she didn't exist to you anymore. I'm not saying what she did was right. It wasn't. It was evil. But she didn't wake up that way. Just thought you should know." I sat with that voicemail for hours. Played it back until the battery light blinked red. And still, I didn't know what to do with it. Was it supposed to comfort me? Excuse her? Explain murder as a symptom of invisibility? Because I had grieved Helen. Loudly. Visibly. But I'd never stopped loving Elise. I'd shown up. Paid bills. Hosted holidays. Maybe I didn't say the words enough. Or maybe they got lost under the weight of loss. But I'd been there. And that had to count for something. Didn't it? The next morning, I stood outside the county jail. I didn't go in to see her. I couldn't. But I stared at the entrance long enough for a guard to come outside and ask if I needed help. "No," I said. Just remembering who I raised. I left a note with her attorney. Just 5 words, written in my own handwriting. "You don't get to win." I didn't sign it. That evening, I sat with Ethan on the porch swing. We watched fireflies flicker along the hedges like they used to when Helen was alive. He leaned his head on my shoulder and asked if we could build a treehouse this fall. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Because that's what we were doing now, building something new from what had been burned down. And as we sat there in the cooling twilight, I realized something important. I wasn't just surviving. I was reclaiming my life. Grief is strange when it arrives late. After the police, after the cameras, after the courtroom, after you've been told you're lucky to be alive, it shows up in quiet places. I found mine in the laundry room. I had opened the dryer to fold Ethan's clothes when I caught the scent of his shampoo, something citrusy and young, and it hit me like a freight train. This boy didn't ask for any of this. His childhood had been detonated in one evening. He would never think of his mother the same way again. And I was left trying to patch together a family with duct tape and memory. I sank to the floor right there beside the dryer and let myself cry for the first time since Elise's arrest. Not the silent, stoic tears I'd been shedding behind closed doors, but an open, broken kind of weeping. I cried for Helen, who wasn't here to see the ruin. I cried for Elise, for who she'd been before greed hollowed her out. But mostly, I cried for Ethan, because I didn't know how to make this world feel safe again for him. Julia found me there, crouched on the floor, holding a towel like it was a lifeline. She didn't say a word. She just sat down beside me and placed her hand on my back. That's the thing about Julia. She knew when not to talk. When the silence was the only language that made sense. Eventually, I spoke. "What if I can't fix this?" "You can't," she said gently. "But you can show him how to live with it. That's what matters now." The fallout was relentless. News crews stopped camping outside our street, but the damage lingered like smoke after a fire. Neighbors dropped off casseroles they didn't expect us to eat. Some avoided eye contact altogether, unsure how to speak to the man whose daughter had tried to poison him. I couldn't blame them. Hell, I still didn't know how to speak to myself some mornings. Then came the calls. The worst ones weren't from strangers or media. They were from family. Cousins who demanded to know what Elise's sentence would be, an uncle who asked if I was sure the food was meant for me, as if there was some universe where her guilt was more tolerable if the victim had been someone else. One cousin, Tina, even suggested that I drop the charges for the sake of the family name. I nearly threw the phone through the wall. But the worst conversation came from my brother, Alan. We hadn't spoken much since Helen passed. He'd been distant, always too busy. But now, he was calling, pretending to care, though it was clear he was just sniffing around for details. I mean, he said with a slow drawl, this'll follow her forever, you know? Maybe you could just reconsider the will, at least. I felt my jaw clench so tight it ached. I already did, I told him. She's out. Permanently. A pause. Well, he said, that's your right, I suppose. My right. I snapped. She tried to murder me, Alan. Silence. Then, people do crazy things when they think they've been left behind. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. I sat there in my living room, staring at the blank TV screen, realizing just how shallow some roots in this family really were. That night, Ethan and I made frozen pizza and played Monopoly. He beat me, fair and square, and gloated like a champion. For the first time in weeks, I saw his eyes light up. Not just flicker with survival, but genuinely glow. After the game, as we picked up the pieces, he asked, when I grow up, can I keep this house? I looked around at the old wood floors, the fireplace Helen had painted, the picture of Elise at 5 years old still framed on the bookshelf. Yes, I said. It'll be yours. But what if she gets out? He asked quietly. Will she try again? The question twisted something in me. Because the truth was, I didn't know. She could get parole someday. She could still try to claw her way back into our lives. But I had no room left for pretending. If she does, I told him, we'll be ready. Together. In the weeks that followed, I worked with my attorney to finalize the new trust. Ethan's education was fully funded. Julia was added as co-guardian. A clause was inserted that permanently barred Elise and Marcus from contesting any part of the estate. Legally, financially, emotionally, I cut the cord. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt necessary. Like setting a broken bone. One Saturday morning, Julia handed me a letter. From Elise, she said. It came to my house. She must have remembered I was your emergency contact. I stared at the envelope. White. Thin. Her handwriting on the front. I didn't open it. Not right away. I left it on the table for days, walking past it like it was some coiled snake waiting to strike. Eventually, curiosity won out. Inside was a single page. Typed, Dad, I won't ask you to forgive me. I know you won't. I know I don't deserve that. I never thought I'd become this person. I used to look in the mirror and see your eyes. Now I see Marcus's. I hope Ethan grows up to be like you. I hope you protect him from the parts of me I can't explain. I'm sorry, not just for what I did, but for what I made you feel about the daughter you raised. At least I didn't cry. I didn't write back, but I didn't burn it either. I folded the letter, placed it in the back of my desk drawer, and closed it with a quiet sigh. Because even monsters leave shadows. And sometimes, those shadows write apologies. Some mornings, I still check the locks twice. I don't do it because I think someone's coming. I do it because I need the ritual. A confirmation that what happened wasn't a dream, that I'm not walking back into a trap wrapped in tinsel and cake. Trauma, I've learned, has a rhythm. Some days it hums quietly under your skin. Other days, it screams from the corners of your memory. But no matter what, you learn to live with it like an uninvited tenant in your home. Life didn't return to normal. There's no such thing after your daughter tries to kill you. But it found a new shape, a new beat. Ethan started school that fall at the middle school down the road. He joined chess club, made a few friends, even asked me to let him sign up for guitar lessons. I told him yes before he even finished the question. Every time I said yes to something he wanted, I felt like I was building a fence around him, one that Elise would never scale again. Julia stayed close. She didn't move in, but she became part of the rhythm. Dinners, school pickups, grocery runs. Once, over coffee, she asked me what I'd do if Elise ever wrote again. Nothing, I said. I read her words once. That was enough. She nodded, her eyes not quite meeting mine. She's still your daughter. I shook my head. She was. Now she's something else. The story didn't fade quickly in town. There were whispers at the hardware store, awkward silences at church. But people are like weather. They move on eventually, always chasing the next storm. The real healing didn't happen outside. It happened here, within the walls of a house that had once known laughter and now was learning to laugh again. Ethan started calling the guest room his room, even though it had always been his when he visited. One night, he stuck a drawing on the door, a treehouse, big and lopsided, with the words Fort Grandpa scribbled underneath. I asked him what it meant. It's where we'll go when things get loud again, he said simply. That drawing stayed taped to the door. One night, maybe 6 months after the arrest, I got another voicemail, this one from Elisa's lawyer. He informed me that she had been moved to a lower security facility pending psychological evaluation. He used soft phrases like emotional instability and diminished capacity. I let the message play once, then deleted it. I didn't want to decode their language anymore. I'd spent too long trying to understand Elisa's silence, her choices, her motives. I was done translating. But something shifted after that call. Not forgiveness, no. That word had no place in this story. But curiosity. I started looking at old photos again, this time without rage. There she was, 6 years old, missing front teeth, standing in front of a birthday cake I'd made from scratch. There she was at prom, beaming in a too-pink dress. And then college graduation, holding her diploma like it might fly away. That girl was gone. But for a moment, I allowed myself to miss her. Ethan and I did end up building that treehouse. It took 3 weekends, 2 bent nails, and 1 mild argument over whether it should have a trap door. He won. We painted it blue and strung fairy lights across the inside. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It was ours. One afternoon, we sat inside it during a light rain, passing a bag of popcorn between us. He looked up suddenly and asked, "Do you think she'll ever say sorry to me?" I thought about Elisa's letter, buried in my desk drawer. "I think she might," I said. "One day. And if she does? That's up to you," I told him. "But you never owe her anything. Not even an answer." He seemed to consider that. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a letter, handwritten. "I wrote something back," he said, "but I don't want to send it." I took it gently and unfolded it. It was simple. 4 lines. "Mom, I don't know why you did it, but Grandpa loves me, and I love him. That's enough for now." "Ethan," I folded the paper back and gave it to him. "You're brave," I said. He shrugged. "I learned from you." And in that moment, I didn't care what Elise had tried to take from me, because she hadn't won. She hadn't shattered this family. She'd only revealed its cracks, and we had filled them in ourselves. As autumn settled in, I had the words "In trust we heal" carved into a small stone and placed it at the edge of the garden. Not for Elise, not even for Helen, but for the life that remained, the life we chose to keep building. I still lock the doors twice. I still wake some nights in a sweat. But I also wake to the sound of a boy laughing downstairs, to the smell of pancakes on Saturday mornings, to a second chance I never expected. I'm not the man I was before. I'm something harder, something clearer. And I've learned that love, the kind worth keeping, isn't blind. It sees everything, and stays anyway. If this story struck a nerve, if you've ever had to draw the hardest line between family and self-preservation, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose your peace over blood ties? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories that dig deep into the complicated layers of family, loyalty, and survival. See you soon in the next story.